So I'm Regina, and I have mainly gray, but some brown and some pink in my hair with pinkish glasses, a white woman, and a maroon top. Um, and I guess Lane, do you want to describe yourself before we get started?
Yeah, I'm Lane. I'm a white person with shoulder length purple hair and a black striped button up.
All right. And so you can, well, we're going to talk about kind of intervention improve independent living skills of autistic young adults. We were hoping to be able to answer that question, but we're still involved in the evaluation now, so we don't have all of our results, but we will share with you what we have, and we're happy to be here. Next slide, please. So, as was mentioned, Diffusion is a small business. We use science and technology to develop innovative products to advance health and well-being. We're mainly on the West Coast, but our small team does reach out in different parts of the US. Okay, advance, please. And so during this short presentation, we realize it's a very short amount of time. We're going to talk about our skill flakes for autistic young adults, our video-based training, our community engagement and development. We're going to highlight some of our learnings from the development. We're going to describe the study itself, share what we have for qualitative results at this time, and have time for discussion and questions. Advance. And so Skillflix for autistic young adults. So some of you, if you were at this last year, you may remember a little bit about it, but it's a video library of 1 to 3 minute videos that model different skills for young adults as to learn how to communicate in relationships, learn about skills to use in employment, coping with stress in different situations, advocacy, whether it's in a medical office or with a police officer, and more. You'll learn more about that from Lane. And the Skillflex technology itself, it's mainly videos. There's some supporting printable resources that are really helpful, but 90% of the site is all about these micro skills videos that are clustered into larger skills. So we take a skill that's really important, break it down into micro skills, and then folks watch those and learn from these models. And most of them are live action, but we do have some that are animated for a special reason. But like as an example of a skill and a micro skill, an example of a skill is using emotional regulation strategies. And 3 of the several micro skills under that skill would be identify emotional dysregulation triggers, use a plan to prevent meltdowns, and make a plan to manage burnout. So they all relate to the bigger concept. Okay, you can advance, please. And I'll hand it over to Lane.
Yeah, so this should be hopefully playable. One of the videos as an example. A portion, like Gina said, of our videos are animated like this one, particularly those that are more about internal processes or more informational or in settings that would have been hard for us to access. Another large portion are live action videos demonstrating interpersonal communication skills. So this large collection covers a wide variety of topics and skills. It follows these 10 main characters, all autistic young adults with diverse needs, backgrounds, and experiences. And here is one that we made for navigating medical settings.
I really don't want to know my weight right now. I'm gonna stand backward on the scale. Could you please hide the number and make a note to avoid sharing it with me?
Sure thing, sweets. Is there a reason?
I'm just really uncomfy in my body right now and don't want another thing sloshing around in there.
Okie dokie. Well, I'll let the doctor know. She may refer you to someone else about this too. Also, they may want to discuss if your weight is out of average range.
Okay, fine.
Alright, sweets. We're just gonna get some personal and family history, alright?
Yes,
Do you drink?
yes.
How much?
Like, by volume? Could you be more specific?
How many drinks per week do you have?
Like, 2 to 3 over the weekend mostly. Sometimes wine with dinner, if my girlfriend's in town.
A girlfriend, huh? Are you sexually active?
Sometimes.
Do you use birth control methods?
She doesn't. I used condoms. This is a lot. I need like 20-second break from sharing with you.
You got it, sweets. What triggers your vasovagal syncope fading spells?
A bunch of stuff. I don't really know how else to describe it.
What triggered your most recent episode?
Ah, the bus stop. Super cool time. I think what was from a combo of stressing about being late, being super hot outside, and standing for a long time.
How do you feel before you faint?
Could you be more specific? Sometimes I find it hard to describe how my body feels. Maybe use yes or no questions?
Sure thing, sweets. Do you feel any pain?
No.
Nausea?
Yes.
Okie dokie, Eric. Time to take your blood pressure and temperature.
Sure. Would you mind doing them at different times? I don't like having everything touch me at once.
Sure thing.
Great. And if you could tell me what you're doing before you do it, I'd appreciate it.
You got it, sweets. I'm going to slide this onto your bicep to take your blood pressure. May I take your arm?
Yes, thanks.
So we can advance on to the next slide. So yeah, that's just an example of one of our videos. There's a pretty wide variety of them. We worked to engage the autistic community at every step, of course, as advisors and focus group participants, also as script writers. We hired 5 autistic young adults who worked on the scripts of the videos, which actually is just kind of coming up in the chat over there. We had 5 autistic script writers from across the US. They had different life experiences, different support needs. We worked with them to help accommodate those support needs. You know, some folks we worked with in one-on-one meetings, writing together. Other folks found that they wanted to, you know, accommodate their own schedules and write asynchronously. Some just liked having co-working time where we kind of like body doubled to create a productive space, but we had a really interesting time, you know, working with a very diverse group of script writers. And then we also, when we went on to film the videos, we also hired a majority of autistic actors to portray our autistic characters in the videos. And that meant we were able, oh, and then also, of course, autistic staff on the project, such as myself. And that meant we were able to get community input at every stage, from the development of the curriculum to the ideas for the scenarios depicted in the videos and the creation of the videos themselves and the functionality of the platform. So we can move on to the next slide. And yeah, so we learned way more amazing things than I can account here from all of those different ways of working with folks, but some of the highlights that shaped things significantly were the accessibility input, making sure the symbols and images we used for the platform made sense to our audience. So, you know, at one point we replaced a smiley face with a plus sign because people were like, well, it doesn't make me happy, but I do want to add it to my saved list, for example. You know, so, and then also that the site was accessible, had features like a dark mode for folks with sensory sensitivities. We also, of course, got our priority skill areas from the community, particularly things around support with employment and self-advocacy, skills related to intimacy and relationships, as well as skills dealing with impacts of things like masking, meltdown, and burnouts. One of the biggest things that came from our formative work was the emergence of a subsection of videos called Meet in the Middle videos. These are videos that SkillFlix users can share with friends, family, and other neurotypical folks in their lives that share skills for better understanding and communicating with autistic people. These videos seek to address double empathy theory and recognize that our viewers, you know, were saying, we're doing all this work to communicate with neurotypical people. We're watching these videos, we're learning these skills. We also want those people in our lives to be doing work to understand and communicate with us better, just recognizing that communication is this two-way street. So all of that kind of coming together to be a neurodiversity affirming approach that avoids framing kind of culturally neurotypical communication norms as the right way and make sure is to be based in users' strengths. So we can move on to the next slide. Here's just a fun photo from set, 2 of our autistic actors. We filmed for 3 weeks. We had a really amazing time working with actors to help shape their characters and how their characters kind of portrayed themselves and figure out how we could accommodate everyone's needs from, you know, while filming, because sets can sometimes be a challenging space to be accommodated in. Just as you can see, we've been working on this project for a long time. We had our phase 1 pilot way back in 2020. We did all our usability testing, and it's been a long journey since then. We only very, very recently, like Gina mentioned, concluded our final evaluation, our RCT evaluating the full curriculum, which I will tell you about on our next slide. So here you can see a little bit about our study design. The study aimed to establish the efficacy of the SkillFlix training library for autistic young adults to support their skills in communication and healthy relationships. We had an intervention group and a control group. The control group got access to the resource once the study concluded. That control group received access to a flyer site with written content related to skills that weren't included in the evaluation, but were part of that kind of broader SkillFlix curriculum around things like burnout and self-advocacy. And yes, sorry, that's our randomized control trial. So here you can just kind of see the progression through the study. It happened over the course of 4 months. We had a baseline, a 1-month data collection with a survey and a observational role play video call. And then we had another 3 months of access to the resource, and then a final data collection time with the same survey and role plays. And so, yeah, basically, those role plays involved getting on a video call with the project staff and going through these structured, semi-scripted scenarios that demonstrated a variety of communication skills that were part of the curriculum that we asked the users to watch. So we can move on to the next slide now. So I'm sure y'all know how human subjects research can be. We had a time we expected to be done with all our study activities, but things ended up taking more time. We only very recently finished the study activities and are just jumping in the data analysis, but we do have some fun things to share. Here's first our participant demographics. Our average age was 22, ranging from 18 to 28. We had 2/3 that were professionally diagnosed and 1/3 that were self-diagnosed. Of the professionally diagnosed folks, we saw that the median age of diagnosis was 16.5, which is relatively late diagnosis for a lot of folks. We also saw that a large portion of our participants were employed either full or part-time, had completed at least a year of college, and were dating or in long-term relationships. And then you can also see the gender and race spread there. You might notice those don't necessarily add up to 115. We let people select everything that applied to them and are going to be recoding to break that down into all the different fun combinations that can happen there. So yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting snapshot. It's a group of folks who kind of described that they hadn't had a lot of prior access to autism-related resources in the past. This was kind of some of their first introduction to accessing resources related to autism. So we can move on to the next slide. I'll be really quick with this one because we didn't actually get to show the results from either of these, but we had our online survey that had a couple different, scales looking at things like interpersonal competence and mental health and well-being. And then we had these observational role plays where the facilitators followed responsive scripts. They had flowcharts directing how to respond based on what the participants said. The scenarios covered the skills addressing conflict, navigating compromise, and giving feedback, which were focused skills in the assigned portion of the SkillFlix library. And those videos are currently being coded to determine a demonstrated skill score using qualitative coding of the skills demonstrated on a scale of 0 to 10. And we have 3 coders working on it who were trained. They triple coded videos until they reached 85% iterator reliability. Now they're working hard on the remaining videos. Can go on to the next one.
And Lane, it's probably worth mentioning there's 330 recordings that need to be coded, so it's a big job.
Yeah, they're all about 15 minutes long. There's 330 of them. It's quite a task. And here it's just, we don't need to get too into it because obviously this is very in the weeds. This is what our coders are working with. The rubrics, it has kind of the skills that were demonstrated in the videos related to compromise, and then breaks them down into what kind of constitutes ranging from not at all to completely in terms of executing that skill. And that kind of is added to as a sum to create a total skill score, but also we'll be looking at the kind of different components and how those change as well. So we can move on to the next one. What I do have to share, while I don't have skill scores, is some of our usability results. when we asked which skills our participants found useful, 18% mentioned emotional awareness skills such as body scans, 20% mentioned skills related to self-advocacy, and then other skills mentioned include consent and intimacy, navigating burnout, and conflict resolution. We also saw some of these usability scores that got, very favorable. It's overwhelmingly favorable. Some ones that were significantly favorable include ease of access, use and understanding, likelihood of recommendation, favorable depiction of autism, as well as the usefulness of the shareables and the satisfaction with the content. So we got kind of very, very favorable feedback from folks. I can move on to the next one. One part that we were excited to see so much responsiveness to was folks sharing the Meet in the Middle videos and having a lot of success with that. Quite a few people shared the videos and also shared that they found them useful. They helped their people in their lives understand the emotional places they were coming from. They helped them better compromise with each other, understand each other better, had more open communication, more acceptance, and more accommodation. So I think that was, really exciting because that's a smaller portion of our videos, but we're really interested in how we can expand that in the future. We can move on to the next one, almost to the end, right on time. And as usual, we got some really exciting and amazing, suggestions for the future. People were excited by our law enforcement section, our medical care section, wanted to see that expanded into some other professions, see all sorts of different ways of navigating these challenging, professional situations, wanted to see more extreme conflict, as well as more materials on self-advocacy, and especially in the workplace and social situations with acquaintances. So we can move on to the last one. Clearly, looking forward, our biggest priority for us is going to be diving into all of our data. We've got a really large and rich, you would not believe my spreadsheet. It's going out to column ZZZ or something. So we're working on our video coding, our qualitative and quantitative analysis. We're really excited to get into it and hopefully to be able to share our results with everyone soon. And so if you're interested, definitely give us a follow on LinkedIn because we will be sharing more there when the time comes, and I will put that in the